and welcome to Kunsang Payo Choling. We're so glad to have you join us for a teaching by Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo. This one was given to us back in 1992. The title of the teaching is Dispelling Dharma's Bad Rap. So I hope you enjoy it, and we'll begin now. The 7-line prayer will be at the beginning of the teaching, so thank you.
I would like to, dispel an idea or some ideas that each of us might have about the Dharma. I have maintained that the Dharma has received what you would call a bum rap in this country, and that's because of our limited understanding. A bum rap means that we have some ideas about Dharma that may on the surface seem to be true, but in fact they are not true. And so these ideas have taken root, and people have certain ideas or that become foundational or fundamental, and even as they continue, even if they choose to practice Dharma, that idea remains with them. And I would like to dispel that, and I would like to clear it up and give us some clarification on it. The bum rap that Dharma has received, as far as Westerners are concerned, is that when they're first exposed to the Buddha's teaching, when they're first exposed to the Dharma, Westerners tend to think that the Dharma can be a little depressing, can be a little hard to take. Some of the news that you hear when you hear Dharma may seem not quite as upbeat as you would like it to be. This is complicated by the fact that Western religion, and particularly the more recent flavor of Western religion, and particularly I'm referring to Christianity, is that Christianity is branded as being good news, in the sense that one hears that if one were to, in a joyful way, accept Jesus as one's Savior, then immediately things are much better. Dharma is not practiced in that way, and we don't have the same ideas. In fact, it's hard for kids when they first come to the temple. They don't really know what they're supposed to do. So when we first hear about Dharma, we have a different flavor for what we are hearing. We're not really told, first of all, that it's very simple. And with Western Christianity, and particularly the way it's practiced nowadays, we're told that it's very simple, that one merely has to accept a certain idea or thought and begin to practice that idea in a certain way, and it's very simple, and then suddenly everything becomes peaches and cream. You never hear that with Dharma. You never hear that with Dharma. Dharma is heavier in a sense. It's meatier. It's more serious. An analogy would be like this. If you were trying to walk through a room to get from one doorway in the room to another doorway, the flavor of Christianity as is practiced today would be to say to the person by clapping them on the back, hey, don't worry, you're going to get through the room, everything's going to be fine, just think positive, or just think a certain way, or just think that salvation is at hand, and everything's fine. You're going to get through that room. Just, do a couple of small things and maybe everything will be all right. Now, Dharma is not presented in that way. Dharma is presented very differently. The way that we present Dharma is to say, well, now you're going to cross a room. In that room are many, many, many obstacles. And so you really have to be careful. And what you ought to do is really learn before you cross the room about the obstacles. You ought to really try to understand what they are. Really try to get a good view, a good solid understanding as to where those obstacles are. And we think first of all, and second of all, that you should turn on the light. We think you should turn on the light and you should open your eyes and you should really have an understanding that you are in fact crossing the room. And you are moving through the room. And you must get around the furniture. And you should try not to fall. And that it's a little tricky finding the door on the other side. But look, we're going to help you. And just really go there and try to get in. And so Dharma is presented more like that. So when you first meet the Dharma, if your view is very limited, you might say, gee, what I'd really rather hear is everything's just going to be all right. And it's really simple and really easy. Instead, you hear something like, this is tricky. I have to tell you, this is tricky, but you can do it. You can get through that room. You can turn on the light. You can get past the obstacles. There are things that you must do. You have to keep your eyes open. That's the big point in Dharma. You have to keep your eyes open and really practice and really get it right. But you can get through that room, and here's the technology. And you're actually given a solid technology, kind of like a map, how to get through that room. So initially, the feeling that you may have from that bit of information is a kind of tension, like, whoa, I really have to work at this. This takes something. I really have to do something here. And so one has to stop, and in a sense it's a little shocking, if you're used to hearing good news or just some sort of blanket statement in a very lightweight way about how wonderful religion is, or some spiritual idea that's very easy to swallow, or sugarcoat. Then when you first hear the ideas that Dharma presents, you might be shocked, kind of, and you might think, gee, that's kind of depressing. I'd rather hear that all I have to do is say a few prayers and everything's going to be all right. I'd rather hear that if I could say so many of one kind of prayer and several of another, that I'll certainly get into heaven. Or I'd rather hear that if I accept a certain idea or accept a certain savior or something like that, then all I have to do is do that and then everything's going to be all right. Well, yeah, so would I, frankly. I'd rather that too. But the problem is, I still, and you still, have to get through that room. So that means you still have to learn how to get through the room without knocking yourself over, falling over anything, bumping into walls. And the best way to get through a room that you're unfamiliar with, the best way to understand how to make your move, how to make your journey, is with your eyes open, and it is with having a technology that you can actually use. Technology of meditation, of right view, of right conduct, of correct absorption, of pure activity. These kinds of technologies one needs to have. One needs to accumulate knowledge, one needs to accumulate wisdom in order to get through that room. And symbolically you would say, or the analogy rather to that would be like being able to turn on the light rather than walking through the room with your eyes closed, not knowing what's in there. I think that we all wish that it would be easy, and I think that some of the ideas that are really popular in this day and age, sort of the kind of new age kind of ideas that are out now, are very appealing to some of us. We have ideas that if we simply think positive, everything will be all right. We have ideas that if we maintain a certain ambiance of joyfulness, that somehow that joyfulness will really sink in and be real. We have this idea that if we simply act in a certain way, conduct ourselves in a certain way mentally, that somehow that mental attitude that we adapt will be a profound inner reality. The problem with that kind of idea, the idea that is popular nowadays, is that at some point we're going to become disappointed. And for those of us that have tried to proceed in that manner, I guarantee you, if you've done that for any length of time, you will have become disappointed. It's a little pie in the sky, it's a little too simple, and it doesn't quite work. It's very difficult to keep a positive attitude all the time, because that keeping of a positive attitude all the time is actually a neurotic process. Why is it neurotic? Look around you. In this world we have intense suffering. Even in this world, only in this world, and the Buddha tells us that there are many worlds. We have intense suffering, horrible suffering. There is intense poverty. We as Westerners hardly ever see what suffering there really is in this world. One has to go to third world countries, perhaps, to see the intensity of suffering that human beings can actually see, can actually experience. We have old age, we have sickness, we have death, we have suffering, we have poverty, we have hunger, war, all the time. Every place on the earth there is always a war happening, always, on this beautiful earth. The earth itself, which seems to be so stable and such a source of joy in the sense that it's very beautiful, and we're here, and right now we're alive and we're okay, the earth itself is in trouble. The earth itself is the beauty of the earth and the health of the earth is disappearing at a rapid rate. It's disintegrating like dust under our feet. Everything is impermanent. And so to maintain a positive attitude under these conditions, you have to be nuts, frankly. It's a neurotic thing to do. It isn't quite right. And you can't spend the rest of your life faking it. It just won't fly. If you spend the rest of your life faking it, you simply increase your neuroses and the division within your mind. And at some point, a hurt or a pain or a kind of cynicism comes forth. The Buddhist teaching does not recommend that kind of thing. The Buddhist teaching recommends something more like practicing and really practicing soundly and effectively and well, but practicing with one's eyes open. Practicing with the eyes open means that you look and you see that samsara is faulted. Samsara means cyclic existence, the world of death and rebirth, the continual cycle of death and rebirth. The Buddha teaches us that cyclic existence is faulted, and that the first step in our liberation is to actually see the faults of cyclic existence. The first things that we do in practicing the Buddha's teachings are sad things. Did you know that? They can be kind of sad, and one can actually feel a sense of grief. Because in order to effectively practice the Buddha's teachings, we have to look at the faults of cyclic existence. Even when we're young and vital and beautiful and healthy, we have to look at the fact that our death is imminent. That even when we are young and vital and beautiful, we could die now. There's no guarantee that you'll live to see the next day. None. And even if we live to be quite old, I'm 42 years old now, and as a person who is 42, I'm half done, and I can hardly believe it. I can hardly believe it. It always seems unfair, doesn't it? Just when you think you've got some sense and you feel like you're really capable of living your life effectively and making some decisions, you find out that you're half through or more. And so even if you live to be very old, cyclic existence is disappointing and it is faulted. And the other thing about cyclic existence is this: cause and effect are actually true and they actually exist. That if one allows oneself to live in an undisciplined way, having hatred, greed, and ignorance in one's mind, one will produce an unfortunate and unhappy rebirth. This is what the Buddha teaches. And even if one engages in simply ignorance, and ignorance means you don't know any better, such as in the case of an animal, Like a dog, for instance. A dog is innocent, it seems, doesn't it? Doesn't it seem like a dog is innocent? How can you fault a dog for being a dog? Dog doesn't know any better. If I let my dog in this room, she'd tear it apart. She'd pull the books down from the shelf and she'd chew them up, and pretty soon she'd have the whole place dismantled. And she would have done something really unfortunate. She would have engaged in some non-virtuous conduct. And in her ignorance, she would never have known it. And that's the fault of cyclic existence. That in our ignorance, we can engage in behavior that causes us future suffering. We do it all the time. Anytime that we are angry, anytime that we are jealous, anytime that we are competitive, anytime that we want what's not ours, anytime that we are antagonistic in any way, anytime that we are not kind and not helpful, in our ignorance, we are creating the causes for future unhappiness. And that is the fault of cyclic existence, is that we can't see it. Why can't we see it? Because we only have a memory since the time of our birth, actually later than that. We have no real memory of our previous incarnations. We don't know what created the conditions that we're living under now. Do you have a wart on your nose, or do you have a hump in your back, or are you poor, or are you basically unhappy? Is it hard for you to stay happy? Do you have trouble with relationships? What's the problem here? Whatever it is, you don't know the cause of it. You think you know it. Sometimes you can reason it out with what you've seen happen in this life, and you can try to give yourself a therapeutic tune-up and try to create your life in such a way that you keep yourself from unfortunate circumstances. But actually the causes for what you are experiencing now, in every regard, do not come from this life. The seeds of them come from previous incarnations. And those previous incarnations are what is at fault. But you can't know that. You don't know that. And that is the fault of cyclic existence. That being the case, looking at that and seeing that is difficult to do, isn't it? It's difficult to see that cyclic existence is so laced with suffering, that suffering is so all-pervasive. Well, does that tell you that in the Buddha Dharma we want you to be unhappy? Not at all. And here's where the bum rap comes. That isn't the case at all. The whole goal of the Dharma, the whole goal of the Buddha's teaching is to attain the state beyond suffering. Is to attain happiness, but real happiness. Not superficial happiness, not the one you're faking, not temporary happiness, ultimate and supreme happiness, the state in your mind where you are free of the causes of suffering. And one can only be free of the causes of suffering if one were to practice intensely rooting out the three root poisons, hatred, greed, and ignorance, from the mind stream. And all of the habitual tendencies that we have accumulated since time out of mind that cause us to perpetuate hatred, greed, and ignorance. This is the technology, and it's intensive. Of course it's intensive. Do you know how much habit we have since we have been accumulating this habit since time out of mind? Do you know the depths of the hatred, greed, and ignorance that we have accumulated the habit of? It's enormous. And so the technology must be intensive. But the point of Buddha Dharma is to be happy. The first teaching that the Buddha gave told us that all sentient beings are suffering. That's the bad news. And that they have something in common. They all wish to be happy. That's the one thing we all have in common. All of us, all human beings, all animals, all non-physical beings, gods, goddesses, demigods, all beings locked in hell realms or hellish realms, all beings that are locked in like hungry ghost realms, really intense realms of desire. All of those beings, all of us, common sentient beinghood that we have is that we all wish to be happy. That is the thing we have in common. And the other thing that the Buddha taught us, which is the best news of all, is that there is an end to suffering. Nothing but such an intensive practice, such an intensive technology can actually promise an end to suffering. Because one has to have the technology for that. It can't be simply thought about. In order for suffering to actually end, one must accomplish. And then the Buddha went on to teach us the method for the end of suffering. He taught us the Eightfold Path. But in the Vajrayana point of view, the Eightfold Path is condensed into two accumulations. These two accumulations are the accumulation of wisdom, which is the accumulation of the awareness of the primordial empty state, and the accumulation of knowledge, which is the accumulation of the understanding of all cause and effect relationships that occur in samsara, and all cause and effect relationships that bring about the cessation of suffering or bring about realization. So those are the two accumulations that one must accomplish in order to actually achieve the realization or the awakening of the Buddha nature. Now, there are some subtle differences in the flavor of the way Buddha Dharma is presented and the way Western religion, of any type actually, is presented. In Western religion, we have also rules of moral conduct. For instance, I'm thinking about the Ten Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. I forget the others, it's been a long time. But they're very good rules. I think every religion has them. Every world religion basically has the same rules. The way that they are presented, however, in Western thought is we are told, thou shalt not. Kind of like, you better not because you're bad if you do. It's wrong to do that. Now, the Buddha Dharma really doesn't present the idea in the same way. Now, we're told, of course, that you're wrong to do that because that's not the proper way, that's not the godly way. And we are given good reasons for not doing that, but it's still presented as a moral issue to do that or not do that. Actually, the Buddha Dharma has a slight difference in the way that this thing is presented. And it's really important, if you can hear this and hear the subtlety of it, it might really help you to see the difference and to catch the difference in flavor between between the methods of presentation, and really understand that, in fact, Buddhism is a very happy religion. In Buddhism, we are also taught not to do certain things. We are taught that there are heinous crimes and semi-heinous crimes and minimal crimes, and there are things that you absolutely should never do, not even at the cost of your own life, and there are things that you ought to do, and actually, because of the way of the mind state and the particular cultural flavor in which the Buddhist teaching first appeared, often the Buddhist teaching appears like a series of grocery lists. You know, the 10 things you should do, the 14 things you ought not to do, 17 things you should do on Thursday, and then on Friday morning, the 24 other things that you can do when you have time. And it's lots of different lists and things that you can learn that are interesting, but for Westerners, you kind of snooze out on them a little bit. And they're hard for us. But the understanding that are behind all of those lists, all of those things that we should not do, is deeper than that. Let me try to explore a little bit with you and take a for instance. Let's say in Buddhism we also have the idea that one should not kill. In Christianity we have that. I think in Judaism we have it. I think in Hinduism and all the world's religions, one should not kill. In Buddhism we have one should not kill as well. The idea is presented in this way. It isn't emphasized that it is wrong to kill, as though killing were a moral issue. It is presented in this way, that when one kills, one creates within one's own mind stream an inflammation, actually. An inflammation. One's mind becomes inflamed with the necessary components of killing. In order to kill, if one is killing for food, or if one is killing for self-protection, or if one is killing out of anger, or if one is killing just to squash a bug, whatever one does, however one kills, whatever one's idea is when killing, that idea is either going to be like this. If in the case of anger, the idea or the habit that causes one to kill will be hatred. And hatred, when it appears in the mind stream and is acted on, everyone has hatred in their mind stream, or we wouldn't be sentient beings. We have it. If you feel anger, if you've ever felt anger in your life, there is hatred in your mind stream. So we all have that. But to take that hatred and to embellish it, to bring it into material existence, to actually act on it in such a way as to kill somebody, causes the hatred in one's mind stream to ripen even more deeply, causes the hatred to become inflamed and to fester, and to actually become like a severe inflammation, and then it's hot and feverish within the mind stream, and the hatred is not solved. For instance, if you hate somebody, and in the hatred you have the idea that if you kill them, the problem will be gone, or if you beat them up, the problem will be gone, the problem will be solved. That idea is erroneous. In fact, if you beat them up, or if you kill them, the hatred increases, because the habit of hatred is satisfied and the inflammation increases, and that's why you should not kill. Sentient beings are born and die, and they born and die, and they're born and they die. To die and be reborn is no big deal. You've been doing it for a long time. To see someone else die and be reborn is no big deal. I mean, everybody's so excited because they think that maybe they were reincarnated before. Big deal. If that's your main claim to fame, you better think of something else. Because it's not that much of it's not that big of a deal. We've all done this. But the tragedy is that if you were to kill someone, the hatred and the anguish that you would produce within your mind stream and the habit would be increased, so that you would probably likely again kill. That is the tragedy, and that is why one should not kill. One instead should develop the habit of cherishing all sentient beings, that habit of compassion, that habit of viewing all life as being precious, because it is precious. That we are born and die and are born and die again and again and again doesn't make us less precious. It shouldn't be taken lightly simply because that has happened. But what we must do, what we have to do, is to develop the habit of seeing the preciousness of all life, of practicing kindness, of practicing generosity. And so we have to decrease the inflammation of hatred. And so the Buddha teaches us that one does that by practicing generosity rather than by practicing the hatred of killing or hurting another. We renounce that. We pull ourselves away from that. And the thing that's different about the Buddha Dharma also is that when you find hatred in your mind stream, you don't get on a guilt trip about it. We don't have guilt like that. We do have confession. If one finds hatred in one's mind stream, one visualizes the Buddha or Guru Rinpoche or one's own guru in front of oneself and confesses that hatred and I have this hatred and I see that this is in my mind stream and I wish to renounce it and I offer it and I wish to instead feel only compassion. And so one confesses it in that way, but one does not go around feeling guilty. We don't have guilt. It isn't fashionable in our religion. Because it's pointless. Because then you have the habit of guilt. You see? And that's not a better habit. So the confession is done simply to kind of cut the thing out and have a way or a method of offering it up, giving it out, putting it away, cutting it off at the root. If instead of engaging in the hatred, you engage in the confession, you are cutting the inflammation off at the root. And you are decreasing the habit of hatred and increasing the habit of love. And that's the point. In the same way with coveting your neighbor's goods or your neighbor's wife or whatever it is. In Christianity, that's something in the Ten Commandments. Well, we have those ideas in the Buddha Dharma too, and they're in all world religions, I believe. At least all that I've heard of. That one should not have desire for other people's things. In fact, in the Buddha Dharma it goes further in that one should think, someone told me today that they like my coral mala, so I'll give it to them. Or maybe if I won't give it to them, I'll make prayers that they have 10 coral malas. Or if you see that someone has a nice new Cadillac, you think to yourself, I'd like to have that Cadillac. No, that's not what we do in Buddha Dharma. We think, I wish they had 10 Cadillacs. I wish they had 100 Cadillacs. I wish they had so many Cadillacs they didn't have enough days to drive them all. That's kind of what you think in the Buddha Dharma. You think like that. And why do you do that? Not because you're a bad person if you want someone else's things. Now you see people that consider themselves spiritual people walking around going, oh no, I really don't want anything. I'm really a simple person. To which I say, baloney. And also, stop faking it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it's not flattering to you. You look silly doing it. Thank you. So we all have desire, and we all have greed. We all have those things. We have those feelings. But the point in the technology that we are given in the Buddha Dharma is to not increase the habit of them. So if we really live in a poor home and we wish we had a beautiful home, and we drive by beautiful homes and we see beautiful homes and we think, I wish I lived in a place like that, then you think, oh yeah, maybe you can think to yourself, oh yeah, that's me desiring something again. I can see the fault of that kind of desire because that kind of desire doesn't produce any real happiness. So I think I'll do instead what the Buddha taught me to do, which is to try to be as generous as possible to all sentient beings. And so we practice generosity instead of practicing desire. And in that way, the inflammation of desire doesn't increase, but the habit of generosity and kindness does increase. So you accept yourself. Yes, it's true, you do want to live in a big house. Yes, it's true, you do have desire. But what's more true about you and what is increasing every day, moment by moment, is that you are growing in kindness, growing in generosity, and in fact you are unveiling your true nature, which is the Buddha nature, which is the very essence of kindness and generosity. Now each of us also experiences lust. Each of us experiences desire, sexual desire, all kinds of desire. It's not only sexual desire, but it's desire for objects, material desire, emotional desire, desire for power, lust for money. Lust is so much a part of us. It's a big part of our culture. Isn't that true? In fact, lust is recommended in our culture. Isn't that true? I mean, you can't go to buy a car without seeing a picture of a girl in a bikini, can you? Or some kind of outfit where it's going to make you think that if you buy the car, you'll get the girl. Which actually, as a woman, I kind of resent that. Because I don't know what we're supposed to think of. But anyway, you don't exactly see like bodybuilders standing on the sides of cars going, buy this car and you'll have me. It's kind of biased, isn't it? But anyway, being a woman, I can speak about this more freely. In our society, lust is highly recommended, and it's developed in us. There are people who are involved in creating the trends in our culture, the advertisements in our culture, the things that make our culture fly in terms of material goods and what becomes fashionable and such as that. And they play on our lust, they increase our lust, and they actually go on campaigns to try to make sure that our lust continues. So it's quite the thing here, and we are steeped in it. We are steeped in it. We all have it. And we all have strong sexual desires. It's part of our biological heritage. It's part of our makeup. But more than that, and this is the real reason behind all of that biology, it is the habit of our mind. It has been the habit of our mind since time out of mind. There is not a time when we as sentient beings did not feel lust. Each of us deal with lust in different ways. Some of us let lust rule our lives. Some of us let lust make our decisions for us. In fact, most of us do that. In some cases, we hide our lust. In some cases, we practice our lust in secret. In some places, we think of lust as an okay thing and try to celebrate it in a certain way. We all have different ways to cope with lust. And the question I have to ask the ordained, who are total renunciates and they've renounced that they're celibate and they no longer drink alcohol and they can't lie, so don't ask them how you look today. There are many things that they cannot do anymore. A nervous giggle over there. Yeah, I know. So I have to ask you, on the day that you actually took the robes and shaved your heads, did all of your lust disappear? That was a dirty laugh I heard. No, right? Didn't instantly disappear the minute that you put the robes on. And how long have the longest of you been wearing robes? What is it? Almost 3 years. Huh? Is that right? 4? 4 years now. Wow. That's a long time, isn't it? So has the lust disappeared? No. Hasn't disappeared yet. That's true. But the way that one deals with it is by practicing renunciation. Have you found a decrease in lust? Yes, you have. Has the habit of your mind changed? Yeah. Have you found that when you no longer steep yourself in certain things and you no longer consider things available to you and sort of dash cold water on it in that sense, have you found that gradually over time the idea of that and the longing for that decreases and that you're less mindful of such things? Have you found that that's true? Yeah, I know that it is. I know that it is. And it's different for different people. For some people, that takes a long time. And for other people, it's very quick. But did you find that the most effective way of dealing with that is to pretend that you didn't have any lust? Did you try to do that at first? Did you try to be kind of holier than thou? Did you try to do that, any of you? Oh, come on. I saw you when you first got your robes on, prancing around. It didn't really work, did it? Did it? What worked is actually practicing the technology and really renouncing over a long time. Do you feel guilty sometimes when you feel those kinds of feelings? Yeah? Did you know that that's not what the Buddha taught you to do? The Buddha taught you to know that that is one of the faults of cyclic existence, and actually when you feel lust or when you feel desire, you should be grateful for it. You know why? Because it gives you an opportunity to see the faults of cyclic existence, and that here in cyclic existence you cannot escape it totally. And then you can meditate on the thoughts that turn the mind, and you can really see the faults of cyclic existence and diminish the habit of that lust by meditating on that. And you become disgusted with cyclic existence, don't you? Disgusted enough to want to really abandon it and decrease the habit. And it makes you wish and long for salvation. Wish and long for liberation. Actually, what's happening to you is that as you practice not increasing your habit of lust, not increasing your habit of hatred, not increasing your habit and inflammation of greed and ignorance, as you do not increase the inflammation of that and the habit of that, the purity of your mind is beginning to emerge. And as the purity of your mind emerges, you long for liberation. You long for nothing else. That longing is the longing that actually brings you to the door of liberation, and is that longing that you rely on at the time of your death in order to achieve some result. That's devotion. That longing for liberation is devotion. So you should never feel guilty for being a human being. You should never feel guilty, and you should never feel like it's wrong to be like that. You never think of it as a moral issue. You think that finally you're loving yourself and you're being kind to yourself in a way that no one has ever been to you. And you are guiding yourself in such a way as to not increase your suffering, not increase your habit, to not make the inflammation worse. It's like having a terrible inflammation, hot red inflammation, and instead you're putting a cool cloth on it, a cool and soothing balm on it. You understand what I'm saying? So the more that you practice your renunciation, the more that you are loving yourself. So it's a beautiful way to live. A beautiful way to live. So you should be kind to yourself in that way. And in that way you can understand that Buddhism is a very happy religion. The lamas that I have seen that have really accomplished the Buddha Dharma, that have really practiced it in such a way as to really make some real progress. These lamas are I've never seen a really unhappy lama. I've never seen one that's unhappy, an unhappy teacher. And the monks and nuns that I've seen practicing in the monasteries, the ones that are practicing for some time, they're content. They attain happiness. And it is because they have nurtured themselves, taken care of themselves, and brought themselves through this intense suffering, through the pointedness and single-mindedness of their practice. And that's a really important way to view the Buddha Dharma. It is a happy religion. Truly, it is a happy religion. For myself, I feel that I was born in Brooklyn, New York, half Italian, half Jewish. So I'm a very worldly woman. And even though I'm in the position that I'm in, even though my teachers have recognized me and enthroned me in the way that they have, I'm a Westerner. I'm an American woman. And they have requested me to maintain as I am, as a lay woman, not as a nun, in order to teach American people. And so I'm doing that. I'm glad to do that. And I'm a worldly woman. I think like a worldly woman. I'm extremely practical. Those of you that really know me know that I'm an extremely practical person. And that's why I recognize the happiness and the value of the Buddhist teaching. Because it doesn't just give me some sugar-coated pill and say, here, take this, you might feel better. It doesn't give me a placebo. You know what a placebo is? It's nothing. It's candy. It doesn't give me a placebo. It doesn't give me something fake or false. The Buddha Dharma arms me, as it does you, with all of the necessary weapons. When I say weapons, I don't mean combative or fierce weapons. I mean Vajra weapons. Sword of wisdom. The three-pointed trident that roots out hatred, greed, and ignorance. These Vajra weapons, and there are so many of them that are depicted in the pictures of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and make them look so fierce. These Vajra weapons are the ones that cut through. I am armed with them. I am given the way to meditate so that I increase my wisdom and I am able to attain an awareness of the primordial empty state. I am armed with the carved blade so that I can cut off the attachment to cyclic existence. I am armed with the weapons that make it absolutely possible for me to cut off the distinction and the awareness in my mind and the attachment and the hope and fear that result with a fixation on what is clean and what is dirty and what is high and what is low and what is pure and what is impure. I am armed with that kind of capability through practicing the Buddha Dharma, so as to be able to have my mind abide spontaneously in the luminous primordial view and not be attached to the depths of samsara. These are the things that I am actually armed with through meditation, through right conduct, through acts of generosity, through prayer, through confession, through making offering, through teaching, through praying. I mentioned praying already, didn't I? Through all these different methods, through studying, I am able to actually accomplish. And it is as though I were trying to make my way through a dark room in which there were many things that I must get over, under, around, or through. Samsara is like that. And we must be armed. We must open our eyes and see the faults of it, see the obstacles, see the things in the room. We must turn on the light. We must be able to practice so that we can actually negotiate our way through. It isn't enough to think positive with your eyes closed. You won't get through the room that way without stumbling. And so being the practical woman that I am and being the worldly person that I am, in my mind, the Buddha Dharma is the happiest of teachings because it actually gives us the method. Over and over again, I'm asked by Westerners who first come to me, well, you're a Western woman, you were born in Brooklyn, New York, for goodness sakes. Why would you convert to Buddhism? I don't think I ever converted to Buddhism. I found that the Buddha spoke what I knew was in my heart. So I don't feel that finding Buddhism was a change for me. In that I'm a practical woman, and in that I, like you, wish to cross the ocean of suffering. I wish to cross that ocean, and I wish to reach the other shore, that of liberation. And it doesn't make any sense to me to do it through any other method than by traveling in a boat, in a ship that is seaworthy, that has proved itself to make that trip again and again and again. Because there have been those before me and before you who have achieved the result of liberation through practicing the method. I'm going to take a boat that has made the journey before and has made it successfully. I'm going to take one without any holes, and I'm going to take one with a good captain. Being practical, that's the only thing that makes sense to me. I'm not going to undertake that journey in a rowboat. It's happy news to me that there is such a method. It's happy news to me that we are in a land where the Dharma is taught. And it's taught in such a way that we as Westerners can actually understand it. It isn't told in a foreign or exotic way. It's being spoken to you in a way that you can actually understand, that reaches your mind and you can hear. And you can continue. You don't have to stop here just coming to Sunday morning teachings, which are meant for a general audience. You can continue by engaging in the accumulation of different mantras and practices, and you should ask about those as to what you can do. You can begin to engage in preliminary practice and begin to accomplish ngundro, which is preliminary practice. There are many different things that you can do to begin to move along the path and actually engage in this most excellent technology. That's the good news, and it's happy. It's happy. Remember, the Buddha taught, yes, samsara is pervaded with suffering. Yes, we all wish to be free of suffering. We all wish to be happy. But the Buddha also taught some remarkable bit of news, and that bit of news is that there is an end of suffering. There is a cessation of suffering. And that end of suffering is called enlightenment. And it is attainable. And one should practice. So thank you very much for hearing this information, and I really hope that the way that you hear this is to understand that there's something remarkable and miraculous about all this. That while the lazy part of us wants to think that maybe we can just do some small little sugar pill thing and get through and think that we're spiritual just by doing that. But the part of you that is sensible, and you're sensible people underneath it all, the part of you that knows that it's got to be something meatier than that, that part of you has to be chomping at the bit and jumping up and down happy, knowing that there is a method. So please take that happy news and think to yourself whether or not you wouldn't like to go a little further on the path. And for those of you that are already on the path and have actually taken the method as your heart practice, you should think for yourself whether or not it isn't time to really bite the big one, to really go for it, to really engage in practice in a more intensive way, to practice kindness as though your life depended on it, to really accomplish, to really make the practice your very heart treasure, so that your whole life becomes the very embodiment of the method and a display of the way. You should think for yourself whether or not it isn't time for that.
Thank you so very much for joining us today. We're thrilled to have you, as always, and can't wait for, a full opening of KPC, and for no more pandemic in the world. But right now, just to let you know, we're always open outside, dawn to dusk, every day. The outside has become quite amazing. We've got another statue that was donated to us of Shakyamuni that's out there and greets everyone as you come in the driveway, as well as a beautiful statue of Guru Rinpoche that will be enthroned across the street as soon as the throne is built and that sort of thing. Inside, we are open from 11 to 4 on the weekends, on Saturdays and Sundays, and holidays. And so we hope that you can come at one of those times and come enjoy the prayer room and, spend a little time in the energy here. We'll see how soon we can increase that. Meanwhile, there's so much to do, and we have practices online, on Zoom every day. They're available. You can find them on our website, tara.org, and on that site you go to events, and then there's a calendar, and on the calendar you will find all you need to know. Click on the event and it will tell you where it is, if it's on Zoom, if it's on YouTube, if it's on Facebook, wherever it is, and how to get there, what the link is. So you can always join up with us. We're happy to have you anywhere, anytime. We have meditations on Saturday and Sunday at 10 a.m. And these teachings of Jetsunmas are regularly given on Sundays, as you know, because you're here, at 11, and on Wednesday evenings at 7:30, and that would be barring one of the, monthly practices, if it happens to fall on a Wednesday, would take that time slot. We have the Yumka and the Rigs and Dupa for Dakini Day and for Guru Rinpoche Day. Today, in fact, is Dakini Day, and it's Sunday, so the practice is at 2 p.m. if you are curious about that practice and want to join with us, it's on Zoom, and you can find that on the calendar. Anyway, we hope you can come visit. As I say, so much to see and do, and such a wonderful way to, what do I want to say, come down from the frenzy of regular life. So we invite you, and until the next teaching of Jetsunmas, I hope to see you on that teaching, virtually or otherwise, and have a wonderful week and take care of yourselves.